So what's a Grape Explorer talking about today? So we are back to our Grand Cru Classe series. If you're not familiar with our Grand Cru Classe series, we really dive into a property. We talk about the past, the present, and the future of a property. And we wanted to spend some time today with what I feel is one of the really true treasures, but a lot of people, flies under the radar a little bit. So I'm going to explain a little bit about this property. It's called Chateau Branaire Ducru. But what an interesting vintage that we have to talk about today. This is actually 2003 vintage, and we call it Up from the Cellar. So we decided to open this wine, and we do, 2003 is a very special vintage for me. Another format that we talk about is where to identify this property on a map. So we broke out our map today in Bordeaux. You can see Saint-Julien, and this little green area right here is Saint-Julien, and you can see the proximity to the River Gironde right here. So that's very important. We're going to talk about that because every vintage in Bordeaux is different based on a lot of climatic changes that happen. So just to give you a little bit of background history on 2003, it was the hottest record temperatures in France. 100-degree temperatures, in August and July. A lot of people passed away. If you've never been to France, a lot of places are not air conditioned, so they really suffered, in this year. And even the vines, it was brutal. For even the vineyards, a lot of the fruit actually couldn't even withstand this heat. But there was some interesting properties that actually did really, really well. And we want to zoom in a little bit and show you this property right here. So this is Branaire Ducru. It's one of those spectacular vineyards and properties and chateaus. If you ever want to get to Saint-Julien, you've got to make this a bucket list. It's just a beautiful property. Then we also want to show the proximity of this wine and, this vineyard. And we can see right in the town of Béchevel right there, you can see the Branaire Ducru. And then look at the river, the proximity to it. It's quite close. So these are all, defining issues as to why wine is made in such difficult environments. But we want to spend some time had a chance in 2003 to go to the chateau and taste directly from barrel with Patrick Maritot, who is the owner. He was the recent owner of the vineyard. He passed away. What a great gentleman. He was the president of the UCG at the time. This is 65% Cabernet, 28% Merlot, 4% Petit Verdot, 3% Cabernet Franc, and this represents a slight change in the cab in the vineyard. But this did make it into the 1855 classification. So, this comes in as a fourth growth. But the interesting thing about this property now is run by Patrick's son, Francois, who is really, if anybody's going to replace the dad and really work hard to make this property great, it's definitely him, because Patrick was one of the hardest working guys. I would see him all the time organizing and directing traffic, and especially through the UGC tastings that we used to go to in Bordeaux. So what a gentleman he was, and he passed away at a very young age, at 67. So he had plenty of life ahead of him, but we know that the property is in well hands with the son, and we think that everything is according to plan, and that their 2022 fabulous wine, by the way, I got a chance to taste that. That's on its way soon, so you'll start to see the 22 vintage arrive. But we want to talk about this because this is 03, and again, that was a very hot year, but got a chance to taste this recently. This wine is fabulous. And, when you taste an older wine like that, and we're coming, let's say 21 years, there's a lot of different aspects to older wine. We also want to point out a little bit, too, in the bottle, you can see this wine has got sediment. And when anybody sees sediment like that, this is something, not a negative thing. That's actually a positive thing, because the wine was bottled unfiltered and unfined. That means that they left that sediment in for the reasons, because once the wine goes in there, it creates the sediment. Not a bad thing. It's just that when you get to be a bottle that's 20 years or 21 years like this, you have to just gently decant the wine to make sure the sediment doesn't get, into the glass. That's why it's always good to put this into a decanter whenever you're tasting these kind of wines. And we call this Up from the Cellar because it's been perfectly stored. The wine was just an impeccable bottle. Actually, We have a whole case of this wine, so this is something that's a very special occasion wine, especially 2003. But when you taste an older wine like this, you get a lot of cedar notes. You get that deep violet, cassis. You get deep forest scents, but just beautiful, beautiful wine. But this wine has got a long way to go. I think a lot of people don't realize that, because a lot of people looked at 2003 and they said, oh, that was a hot year. Maybe the acidity structure was a little lower. Yes, the acidity structure, but the acidity structure was more inside of the fruit. And especially a vineyard like this, because when you talk to the owners, they always tell you that the key to success in a hot year like this is actually, underground water, if you want to call them artesian wells, because you're so close to the proximity of the river that a lot of these vineyards that are close to the vineyard, close to the river here, have artesian wells from this river running underneath. So the vines actually have a way of at least going deeper into the ground, searching for water table, coming up and making great wines in a great year. So this 2003 was magnificent from Branaire Ducru. One of, is this flying under the radar? Yes, because a lot of these wines, like if you're tasting 2003 Mouton and Lafite and all these other wines, they're $800 to $1,000 to maybe $1,500 to $2,000 a bottle, depending on what it is. This wine flies under the radar for $200 a bottle for 2003. If you can find it, that's great. If you're interested in it, let me know, because that's what I do. I do old and rare. So, but I wanted to share this because I think that this is truly a magnificent year. When I first tasted 2003s in Bordeaux, I was telling everybody, oh, Americans are going to love these wines. They were a little higher in alcohol than normal, and I think that that's the reason why they came out of the chute and you could actually drink 2003s. Nobody really knew if the wines were going to age properly. How do we all know? I mean, it's just come back 20 years later and try it. Yes, that's what I'm doing. And I'm telling you right now, this wine was fabulous in 2003 vintage. Again, this is a Grape Explorer, always talking about Grand Cru Classe Bordeaux. And we got a real winner here, 2003 Branaire Ducru. Cheers.